Hi, my name is Dr. Nathan Cooper, and I'm a psychologist at the Student Wellness Center. I also teach in the Physician Assistant Education Program, Communication Skills. I did a Doctor of Psychology degree at Central Michigan University, and I've been in practice here as a psychologist at McMaster for approximately 12 years. I do a lot of individual and group therapy. Some of the groups that I run are based in cognitive therapy. And I also run a group on positive psychology.
Dr. Cooper, can you briefly explain to us what depression is and how it is diagnosed in people?
Happy to talk about that. When I think about depression, I think about it in terms of a biopsychosocial model. And in talking about that, when people become depressed biologically, things just start to slow down a little bit. They'll notice that they have less energy. They might find it harder to get out of bed in the morning. There may even be changes in things like appetite. Some people report lower appetite. Some people report increases in appetite. But altogether, there also may be changes in their neurochemistry. So they're experiencing less pleasure because of the neurotransmitters in their brain. They're experiencing some changes there as well. Now, psychologically, that's where I tend to spend more of my time and focus. What we find is that people start to engage in a lot of negative self-talk, self-loathing. So they may be feeling very badly about themselves. They may focus on their mistakes, externalize or overlook their successes, and the result of that is often, feelings of despair, guilt, sadness, self-loathing. These are some of the hallmark signs. And people will find that they're easily tearful. When they're in that state, one of the other consequences is they can often become socially withdrawn. When you're not feeling very good about yourself, it's not a time where you're feeling like texting somebody to hang out or engaging or offering your opinion when it comes to doing group work or other things of that nature. If you're tired, you also may turn down invitations to do things, and life becomes more and more withdrawn or small. So you think about diagnosing depression, there are a few hallmark signs, but that's a framework often for thinking about depression and what it is and how it takes place. It could be caused by something that takes place in somebody's life, and they may notice a change after a loss in relationship status or a death in the family if they're having difficulty academically. Sometimes it seems to come relatively out of the blue, and there's not always a clear explanation for it in terms of somebody's life circumstance. But in either case, those would be some of the things we would be looking at in terms of diagnosing depression.
Now, as a psychologist with many years of experience in the McMaster community, based on your practice, have you seen any kind of increase in the prevalence of depression among us McMaster students? And if so, what do you think caused this increase?
In terms of increase, I don't have any specific statistics on prevalence. What I can say is that from our perspective, there does seem to be an increase in the demand for services. So we take that as an indirect measure that there are more concerns in terms of stress and mental health. Among the things that are presenting concerns with people's mental health, depression and anxiety tend to be the two most prevalent. So looking at it indirectly, we could say yes, that there is an increase in the incidence of depression. It's hard to say how much. The causes for that are many, and that's a much more difficult question to delve into or answer. And sometimes when we think about it from a positive perspective, that people are willing to seek services where they see counseling support and the possibility of medication as interventions which are going to help them to cope more effectively. Perhaps with medication and talk therapy, more people are accessing post-secondary than they have in the past. Other wide-ranging explanations, some people will go as far as to say, to look at the social or cultural fabric of our, province or nation or communities and look as to whether or not there are impacts there. If people are feeling like, they're investing a lot of time and energy in money in their education and wondering whether or not it's actually going to be something that helps them to be, successful or contribute to their overall well-being, this can be things that cause people to become, easily frustrated or depressed.
Approximately, what percentage of your patients would you say visit you for the purpose of coping with depression?
Um, well, we don't tend to diagnose formally. I would say that while anxiety has been on the rise, depression has, maintained consistently second place in terms of what it is that people come in with. And once again, I said that's complicated by the fact that that may be due to difficulties in relationship, difficulties in academic performance, or other things that are causing it. Sometimes it seems to come out of the blue, but I would estimate that in maybe 40% of cases, people are coming in because of, you know, lack of self-confidence, low self-esteem, or chronic and persistent low mood, which we would more likely look at diagnosing as depression at that point.
Based on your experience in the field of psychology, in addition to all the compiled literature, what do you think are some very effective ways to cope and live with depression?
This is certainly our job. I always let people know that I'm in the change business, but in terms of what's indicated in the research literature, it's not only counseling or psychological support. What is indicated as being most successful is some combination of talk therapy and also pharmacotherapy or medication. Medication is certainly indicated in cases where people are having a lot of difficulty simply getting out of bed in the morning or functioning. If they lack that ability to function on a day-to-day basis, sometimes medication can assist them with regulating their emotions enough and having enough energy to get back to a regular routine. Talk therapy really helps with helping people to get new perspective, supporting them in making the changes that are necessary. And when we talk about making changes, we're talking sometimes about making lifestyle changes. Things like diet and exercise can be very important. Maintaining a regular schedule, because when people are engaged, when they see themselves being successful, life can be considerably more rewarding. So whether that be in school-related activities or in their relationships, behavioral interventions are very successful because people can start to see the rewards for the behavior changes that they're making. They see their successes paying off.
To wrap up this meeting, many people visit their community psychologists so that they can find a method to cope with depression. However, coping with depression is only a temporary cure to the issue. Positive psychology is a field that combats depression by praising happiness. Therefore, as a specialist in positive psychology, Dr. Cooper, I ask you, what is a good way that an individual can build themselves to be happy and not face depression in the first place?
You've mentioned positive psychology, and this is certainly something that is, it's new. It also builds on concepts that we're familiar with in psychology. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is something that's familiar to many, and it kind of builds on that work when Maslow talked about things like self-actualization. I think that's one of the concepts that is reflected in positive psychology. Some of what's new about positive psychology is they're actually studying, they're doing unique interventions with individuals and groups of people, and they're looking at the sustained impact on their overall happiness and well-being. When they talk about something like happiness, one of the other bits of terminology that's being used is flourishing, and that's sort of being at your best and finding ways to do that. It's something that I've found to be quite engaging. I found students respond to it very well because they talk about concepts like full functioning. Some of the ways to do that, they focus on a number of facets. One is positive emotion. How do we increase the positive emotion that you experience? How do we address issues like meaning and engagement? And then other concepts they've looked at are things like relationships and accomplishment. And the reason that they look at all these things is because they've looked at people who are naturally happy, and they've looked at what it is that works for them in terms of happiness. And they're finding that they can teach skills to those who are not naturally happy to increase the amount of happiness that they experience or the amount of flourishing. Positive emotion, by example, is one of the things. One major area of study is called the VIA Character Strengths Inventory. This inventory is designed to help people understand what they're good at and help all of us understand that we're not all good at all things. But when we're focusing our attention on the things that we're naturally good at, it's something that brings us pleasure. So some examples there, things like curiosity and love of learning. Some people really love new facts. They love to learn facts. They love to share facts with other people. Taking time out to do something like that during the day and find out something new or go and research something that you're interested in can be very life-giving and very rewarding. So it's likely to bring about the experience of positive emotion. Similarly, some people have strengths in terms of compassion and kindness. So when they do something nice for someone else, they experience that as very rewarding. It boosts their positive emotion. Another intervention or something that they found to be helpful is keeping a gratitude journal. When you're writing down things during the day that you appreciate, things that have gone well, and wondering about why. So if someone's given you a call, they've asked to spend time with you, and you're answering the question why. Why did they do that? Well, they're a good friend to me, or I'm a good friend. The experience of appreciation is not only once because you got the phone call, twice because you had the meeting with somebody, but then a third time because you have the opportunity to reflect on it and write about it. So keeping a gratitude journal is another way to boost positive emotion. Meaning and engagement involves sort of paying attention to something that's bigger than oneself. So living not only for yourself, but living out of your values towards other things. I would suggest that what you're doing right now is you're involved in an activity, in a campaign to assist people overseas that you don't even know. So this is, again, character strength of compassion. You're realizing and wanting to make a difference. It's also something that's bigger than you. It's not focused on your own goals or means, but it's also a way to give back. When we focus on meaning and engagement, these are ways that improve our overall well-being, also our positive emotion. Other things that they found, relationships and accomplishment. Relationships, certainly, for people who are flourishing, they find that they're more well socially connected. People who are in long-term committed relationships also seem to have improved happiness relative to those who are not. The answer is not to go out and try and find a dating relationship, but it is to understand that having positive connections and finding ways to maintain your connections successfully in your social network are things that are not only good for the people that you're in relationships with, they're also good for you. So these are some of the facets of positive psychology. I think that you're right, that the focus is a little bit different than some traditional means of psychotherapy, including cognitive therapy. Cognitive therapy tends to focus on negative events that have happened and to help reframe those so that they don't appear to the individual or they're not perceived by the individual as so negative. Positive psychology is very much focused on building on strengths that individuals have as a way to increase positive emotion